What is up, y'all? It is Jahid, aka Hidi the Scribe. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope you're having a wonderful day so far. And today I have a video that I'm really excited to make. It's a question I get a lot on my different platforms, and it's like, what are some of your favorite books? Every time I go live, people will like ask me this question, and I'm just like on the live, just kind of stuck, like, oh, like I don't know, because like they just caught me off guard because I've read so many books over the years, and they have so many that mean different things to me. And I was like, okay, let me talk about some of my favorite books that I've ever read in my 23 years of consuming literature and such. So today we're going to be talking about 10 of my, like part one, maybe, or 10 of my favorite books of all time. So you can probably see some of them right here. And well, you can't see this one, which is on my Kindle. I had to go find it. But it's going to be House of Hades by Riordan. And if you know me, you know Percy Jackson is my all-time favorite. Well, it's my childhood favorite series. I grew up reading those books. My dad got me into them. And fun fact, there was a point when I was in like middle school, 6th grade, when these books were coming out. My dad was working night shift. So he and I would read the same book, and we'd have different like bookmarks in there, and we would trade off. So like I was getting home from school right around the time he would leave to go to work, and vice versa. So when I would get home from school, I would give him the book. I think that's what we did. I'm trying to remember, because either I would get home from school and I'd give him the book, and he would take it with him to work and then read it when he got home a little bit, and then leave it out for me to take to school, and we switched off, or the reverse of that. Either way, in the Heroes of Olympus series, House of Hades is my favorite. I feel like this book hits all the emotional high notes. We get to see Percy and Annabeth together in Tartarus. We get to see more of Nico. I love it. You know what I mean? Like, this is also part of the reason why I think I love this book so much, is because the wait for it was just agonizing. This feels like it's definitely in the top 3 of Rick Riordan's darkest books that he's written in that universe, in that world. And I loved it. We got to see some dark Percy. We got to see Leo on Ogygia, and it was wonderful. This is one of my comfort reads. I have like a yearly reread of all the Percy Jackson books, and House of Hades still holds up as like my favorite book in the Percy Jackson universe. So these aren't ranked, by the way. Like, this isn't like I'm doing 10 books that are my favorite, but it's not like 10 to 1. You know what I mean? These are just 10 books. Next up, we're going to have Dreams of Gods and Monsters by Laini Taylor. This is the 3rd book in the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy, which should have been a tetralogy. I'm pretty sure that's what you call a 4-book series. Okay, this one's a little tough. There's like a funny story. So I initially, in this series, the books are Daughter of Smoke and Bone, Days of Blood and Starlight, and Dreams of Gods and Monsters. I read Days of Blood and Starlight first on accident. I found it in the library when I still lived in Texas. I was like 11. I was like 10, 11. I found it in the library, thought the cover looked cool, read the 2nd book, fell in love with it. And then I found the 1st book and forgot about it for years. Then found the 3rd book, read the whole series again. And this one is my favorite. I love all the books, but Days of Blood and Starlight is a little too angsty for me. It's not like over the top, but it's just, there's just like a touch of too much like will they, won't they, with like Keru and Akiva. And it's a little bit of that in here too, but it's also like different, but it's more so in Days of Blood and Starlight. And Daughter of Smoke and Bone is it's really close. It's just really close. But what I love about this so much is kind of like the expanding of the mythos, and we're getting to, you know, like go deeper into the lore of the world and how things came to be. And we have like these characters who are like low-key like biblical angels in a way, kind of, and it's really incredible. And we get to see like one of my favorite characters, Ziri, have to step into this leadership role because he's pretending to be someone else. And I had an awesome time, and I got to see one of my favorite characters, Susanna. I love that girl so much. My only beef with this book is this does not read like the final book in a trilogy. This reads like the setup to the 4th book. Like, the way this ends is with like the promise of another book or another 2 books or another series that we never got. So even though I deeply enjoy this story and I always have a fun time reading it, there's always that sense of like, damn, I wish there was more, because the setup is there. And not only that, there's another series, Strange the Dreamer. Strange the Dreamer connects with the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy. And it's like, yo, Laini, come on, bruh. So I love this book, but there's also a sense of disappointment because I know I'm not getting any more than this book. So next up, we've got Six of, like, y'all, I don't know if you can see it, but I have it. You probably couldn't see that. I will have to see when I review this. But I have the Crow and the Cup tattoo on my forearm. I got it with my best friend. But Six of Crows. Six of Crows was my favorite YA fantasy for years. Like, this was untouchable. I read this, I think I was 18. I think it was an 18th birthday present. Yeah, this is my favorite YA fantasy book for years. This is a prime example of character-driven stories done right, because the plot of Six of Crows is so basic. It's not anything special. It doesn't reinvent the wheel, and it doesn't have to, because the cast is so incredible that they just suck you in, and you go on a ride with these characters, with Kaz, with Nina, with Jesper, with Anesh, with Matthias, with Wyland. Like, I love this book. I've read this book. I haven't read Crooked Kingdom, which is the second book in the duology, more than like twice, but I do reread Six of Crows every now and then. Like, this is phenomenal. I think this is, in my opinion, this is Leigh Bardugo's best book. I don't think anything in the Shadow and Bone trilogy topped it. I don't think King of Scars or Rule of Wolves topped it. I don't think Ninth House or Hellbent topped it either. I think to date, I haven't read The Familiar, so I don't know, but I think this is her best book by far. Next up, we have an interesting contender here in I Fell in Love with Hope by Lancali. This was actually my #1 book of 2022. Me and my friend, we got it as a joke. So when I say we got it as a joke, we had been reading a lot of self-published books that year, and the books we happened to read were unfortunately not of like a higher quality. So when we heard about the story and that Book Talk was gassing it up, and for those of you who don't know, usually when Book Talk gasses something up, it's like a coin flip. It's either really good or it's really trash. And so we kind of got this like, oh man, this probably won't be very good. Let's just, get it for shits and giggles. We got it. I read this book in 9 hours straight. It was phenomenal. That being said, this book holds a special place in my heart, but it's not a book I would ever read a second time, because I know, like, the first read was purely vibes. I was here for the vibes, for the feels, for the prose, and it was just a fun time. But I know if I were to read this book again, I would read it with more of a critical eye, and that would detract from my initial enjoyment. And I don't think I would like this book as much if I read it again. So to preserve its memory, I'm only going to read it the one time and kind of, keep my literary innocence, so to speak. And yeah, this story reminded me how important it is for a novel to have a soul, because at the time of reading this, I had been deep in the querying trenches, and I had refined my story over and over and over and over and over. And I had turned it into something, like mutilated it basically into like this product that would have been suitable for agents. And I forgot my why. I forgot why I was even writing the book in the first place. And reading I Fell in Love with Hope kind of reminded me that you write a story not so that it can be read. You write a story because it deserves to be told. And for that reason, and for that reason alone, and for breathing life back into me, this will always be one of my favorite books. Next up, we have the conclusion in my favorite trilogy by my favorite author, The Stone Sky by N.K. Jemisin. What can I say about the Broken Earth trilogy? Oh my God. It is... N.K. Jemisin is such a master of craft. The things this woman is able to do on the page and with words and with stories is incredible. And this is one of the few trilogies, one of the only trilogies, I think the only trilogy I've ever read, actually, where each book is better than the one before it. Because usually in trilogies, they suffer from like second book syndrome, in which the second book just kind of like drags until you get to like the third book. It's kind of like a placeholder, right? It's a lot of like fluff and shit until you can get to like the final act or whatever, and that's set up for book 3. But no, Obelisk Gate was fantastic. Stone Sky was fantastic. In this book, we got more of the backstory from the main narrator of the series, Hoa. We got to see like how he became a Stone Eater, the events that led to Father Earth hating the Origins and like the entire species of humanity as a whole. We had a really satisfying conclusion and a powerful ending, and lots of loose threads were wrapped up. And there was a really incredible moment at the end where a group of characters are meeting and having a conversation kind of after the big bad battle at the end. And you have a moment where you realize, oh shit, this character is actually this person as well. Like, does that make sense? It's like when you realize, oh yeah, you're not just Tom, you're also Jake, and you're also Frank. Like that's all the same person. And realizing that with these people, 'cause I don't want to spoil it. It was like, yo, holy shit! I loved it. I love NK. I routinely reread this, and we actually did the 5th season in December for my Melanin is Magic book club. It's great. Next up, a book that I feel like should be a mandatory read for everyone is A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. This is also a book that I feel like this book finds you. It's not really a story that you find. It kind of comes to you when you're at a point in your life when you need it. So A Psalm for the Wild Built is about a tea monk named Dex who basically goes on like an adventure with a robot named Moscap, and they have conversations about the meaning of existence and the nature of the human condition. And this book caught me at a really necessary time because it reminded me that my worth as a human is tied into the fact that I exist, not what I have the ability to produce, and that there is value in the fact that I take up space. And if all I ever continued to do was take up space and do nothing else, that would be enough. And I really needed that. This book is like a warm hug. It is my favorite cozy book of all time. And the sequel, A Prayer for the Crown Shy, is just as good. They are both phenomenal, necessary reads, and I highly encourage you. It's super quick. It's 140 pages. I read it on a short flight to Texas. It was great. Highly recommend it. Next up, next up, we have another book by one of my favorite authors, which is Middlegame by Seanan McGuire. Holy shit! This is a 500. What is this? 520 pages, I think. 500. Is it actually 520 pages? Did I actually get that right? Am I Himothy? I lied. It's 523 pages. But I read this book in a day. This is phenomenal. This has to do with siblings, excuse me, with siblings Roger and Dodger, who are physical embodiments of like equations of the universe, right? Like Dodger represents like mathematics, and then you have Roger, who kind of embodies language, and together they basically have the ability to control the universe. Like, and there's a lot to do with like time travel and resetting the universe, and it's so much fun. This is my first introduction to Seanan McGuire, and in this list I was trying to do one book per author, because if I didn't, I could have also done a book from the Wayward Children series, also by Seanan McGuire, for which I have several books that are all-time favorites. But Middlegame is wonderful. Seasonal Fears, which comes after this, was not as good, and I haven't read Tidal Creatures yet, but Middlegame is something that I habitually reread. I love it so much. It's completely wonderful sci-fi. Next up, we have what is likely shaping up to be my favorite series if it gets completed, but we have Harrow the Ninth by Tamsyn Muir. So here's the thing with Harrow. Each book in this series at some point has been a favorite. If I make like a 3-part series to this, each book in this series will be in that part of like all-time favorite books. But Harrow holds a special place in my heart just because of the way that Tamsyn really, 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 really demands a lot from the reader in terms of trust. And to me, I felt like the payoff was worth it. I've always said Harrow Hark the Ninth is a masterpiece on the second read. And the reason why I say that is because it is so intentionally confusing and unsettling to really get you into like the psyche of the main character who is slowly descending into madness. And you are meant to feel just as kind of like confused and at your wit's end as she does, and she accomplishes that beautifully. And this hits the emotional beats in a way that Gideon and Nona both come close to, but don't quite hit. Harrow's grief towards the end of this book is something that I physically felt it in my own body. Um, I love these characters so much. I love this world. I am praying we get Electo the Ninth soon. I think Tamsyn has been suffering from long COVID. Praying that she has a speedy recovery. But I need Electo the Ninth so bad. I love Harrow. I've reread each book multiple times. But I love Harrow. Next up, I mentioned earlier that Six of Crows was my favorite YA fantasy, and it was for a long time until it was usurped by Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. This, like I said, is my favorite YA fantasy of all time. Six of Crows is at the 2, then I've got Some Bearer Trials with Aiden Thomas at the 3. This was another book talk book that was getting gassed up. However, it was getting gassed up by my mutuals who I trust. I did not have a good relationship with YA fantasy, so I was super hesitant to pick this up. But I am so glad that I did. Legendborn is phenomenal. I love Bree as a main character. She's one of the few main characters where I felt physically seen and represented by her in the story. A lot of her struggles, just as like a Black person moving in a lot of predominantly white spaces, was my struggle as well, so I could relate to her. I enjoyed the side cast. I really loved the blending of kind of like African spirituality with like what you can. Okay, this is gonna be like a general question, but I don't know what you would classify like the lore of King Arthur. Is that Celtic? Is that Norse? Is that English? Like, I know that might be like an ignorant question. I genuinely don't know, but let's just say like European mythology and just kind of blending those two together. Wonderful. Oathbound comes out in March. I am incredibly excited for Oathbound. That's one of my most anticipated reads of 2025. I do have some small critiques with Legendborn, mostly that as much as I love the story, I do wish that Bree, who is a young Black woman, I wish her love interests weren't both white boys, because I do feel a way about a thing being presented as like Black fantasy, but there's no Black love and there's not really any Black characters either. So, but aside from that, I still love it and I had a great time. I enjoy Legendborn and I enjoy Bloodmarked. So, last but not least, my number one book of 2023, Tomorrow, Tomorrow, and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. Let me go ahead and preface something. I haven't researched it, but I have heard through the woodwork and through some different conversations that apparently Gabrielle Zevin is a Zionist. I have not, again, confirmed or researched that for myself. I just want to say I'm aware that is a thing that people are concerned about. But reading this book, at least to me, I did not notice any like inherently like subtle undertones of like Zionist propaganda or anything that was inherently like, anti-Palestinian. I didn't get that. This was a story that, and again, that if I didn't read it deeply enough and I just missed it, then that's on me. But I enjoyed this story for what it was, about Sam and Sadie, two video game nerds who are kind of having to navigate two people who love each other, but who don't really know how to effectively communicate that they love each other. But even though they love each other, they kind of want to be together, but they can't be together. It's so interesting. It's like a drama with a backdrop of like video games. You know what I mean? To kind of like set the scene. I love this book, but at the same time, it isn't something I would recommend to like anybody, because you would either love Tomorrow times 3, or you'll hate it. And the reason for that is Sam and Sadie are both pretty unlikable. So if you don't like them, you're going to hate this book. But if you love them, you're going to love this book. If you're invested in them, you will enjoy this experience. And I did. And I had a wonderful time. This is another thick boy, like, yeah, close to 400 pages. And I got through it in like 2 days because I had a great time. But yeah, these are 10 of my favorite all-time my God. These are 10 of my favorite books of all time. If you want another like part to this, just let me know and I can make like another like top 10. I might not have all the physical copies, so I might have to be like janky and do it on my Kindle some more. But if you're interested in this and you enjoyed this, just like, yeah, let me know and we'll make it happen. Peace.